Alpha Phi Alpha's Sphinx Talk with Brother Eric Christopher Webb is sponsored by Good Health Wins. For more content, subscribe now.
Welcome to Sphinx Talk. I'm your host, Brother Eric Christopher Webb, and I'm here on location at Alpha Phi Alpha's 2024 Constitutional Convention in Chicago, Illinois. And today I have a special guest, the 30th Western Regional Vice President, Brother Wayne Kimball. Brother Kimball, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here, and I'm looking forward to our conversation today. And like you said, we're at the Constitutional Convention, and what a time we've had this week.
Yeah, it has been a time. Definitely has been a time. It's been really difficult catching up to you. You are a busy man. I was looking forward to making out to the 75th Western Regional Convention that was in Seattle, Washington. When was that? What month was that?
That was back in March.
Back in March. So how did that convention go?
It was fantastic. It was our 75th Western Regional Convention. So for many reasons, right, it was quite special because we were in a milestone year. And therein, we really focused on celebrating our history, but elevating our impact. Mm-hmm. That was actually our theme. And in doing so, we spent a lot of time really honoring the people who have helped make the Western region what it is. But I was very intentional in calling out the latter part of that theme around elevating our impact. It's no secret that we are in a very challenging moment in society right now. We're also in an election year, and I wanted to make sure that we were driving a focus on how to have an impact in our communities. And we could look at that across multiple lenses. Mm-hmm. We could, how can we have a greater impact in the landscape of education? How can we have a greater impact on the political scene, social justice, civic engagement? How can we have a greater impact in economic development, helping Black people and brown people be better entrepreneurs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so therein we culminated the event with the keynote speaker being the current mayor of the city of Seattle, who happens to be a brother born and raised and educated in Seattle. He's an initiate of Alpha Xi, which is the University of Washington, and that's none other than the Honorable Brother Bruce Mayer Harrell.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So what was the theme of that convention? You said it was based on making an impact in the community, economics, but what was the actual theme?
Yeah, like I said, because it was our 75th year, I themed it celebrating our history, elevating our impact. So in other words, I wanted to pay homage to all that has been done over the past, 100 years in the Western region, because even though it was our 75th Western Region Convention, we've been there for over 100 years. So really paying homage to that and celebrating that rich past, but also thinking about the future and how, as alpha men, always leading, always trend setting, always transcending, how we could do even more to elevate that impact in our community and across the Western region.
So the last time I was at one of your conventions, you guys inducted some folks into the Hall of Fame. Did you induct any others into the Hall of Fame this year?
We definitely did. This year we only inducted one person into the Hall of Fame, but he is so very deserving, and that is none other than our very own brother, General Andra Berry. Okay. And this brother has every medal and stripe that you can get. He's the highest ranking official in the military in the state of Nevada. He currently leads our general committee on military affairs. He also does that in the Western region. And he is the reason why we have the military affairs breakfast now at the General Convention.
Okay.
That started in Dallas. and where we had the commander and the Joint Chief of Staff there, right? So he's very deserving, and again, we're very proud of the work that he does.
Well, I say this because a lot of our viewers, we have a lot of viewers that are non-alphas and a lot of viewers that are not only in other organizations, but non-Greeks in general.
Sure.
Let's talk about the Western region. Let's talk about how large what does the Western region encompass? And actually, what is your role as Western Regional Vice President to help the folks understand that?
That's a great question. So the Western region is made up of 10 states on the western part of the United States, including Alaska and Hawaii.
Okay.
And I also oversee 2 of our international chapters that are seated in Korea and Japan. Wow. So most people don't know this, but the Western region of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated is the largest via geographical landmass, right? Because obviously the states are big, and we have fewer chapters in some of the other regions and fewer brothers. But I mean, there's just so much land that we cover, and if you think about it, it's the entire western seaboard of the country. Not to mention, those islands floating in the Pacific, known as Hawaii and Korea and Japan.
So let's talk about what your role is as a regional vice president. What does that look like?
Well, I'm going to answer that in a couple different ways. First and foremost, I am the fiduciary or the overall leader of the region. And so that comes with the opportunity to serve on our general board of directors, where we help run the entire fraternity. But I'm representing and I'm the voice and the advocate of my own region and my constituency therein. So that's first and foremost. And that's, I also oversee IMDP, our intake, and all the other internal functions of the fraternity. But the second part of the way I would answer it is, every regional leader has the opportunity to drive strategic initiatives that are directly suitable to their demographic, right? And so I think that is where an even larger responsibility comes into play of being the regional vice president, is knowing what are the needs of not only your college brothers and your alumni brothers in that area, but also because we are all about, first of all, servants of all, and we shall transcend all. I think it's even more focused on, okay, what is it that we can do to be the voice and the advocate of our community? What is it that little black boys and girls need from an educational perspective, and how is Alpha on the front lines of advocating for that? I think about, what are we doing to set the strategy in the community to say, okay, we're gonna not only help get out the vote, but we're gonna educate voters, and we are gonna make sure that Alphas are working the polling centers and things of that sort, right? All of those things matter when it comes to the role of the regional vice president, because the tone that you set, the vision that you share is what brothers will follow. So again, I'll wrap it up by saying, the role is to serve on the general board of directors and represent your region as a fiduciary of the fraternity. And more importantly, it's your job to make sure that you're driving initiatives and things in the community and leveraging your local chapters and brothers to help get that carried through for the betterment of our people.
Well, you sound very passionate about that. So what's one of your key projects in the Western region?
Oh, thank you so much for asking, man. First and foremost, we're the Western region, so we don't have any HBCUs, and we have very large metropolis type cities, right? Where there are a large amount of black and brown people. The Oaklands of the world, the LAs, I could keep naming, right? But the truth of the matter is, we don't always have representation that looks like us.
At those schools,
At the schools and in the community, right? Like, of course, we have Maxine Waters in Southern California, and we have brothers who are in elected positions and things of that sort. But I say that to say, one of my key initiatives is really focusing on how are we helping drive economic development in our communities. Because we're the West Coast, it costs a lot to live in LA.
Yes, it does.
I mean, we have the highest homeless population numbers in the country, in San Francisco and Seattle and LA. So, I've been really focused on driving initiatives around supporting brothers who are entrepreneurs, and just in general, making sure that we are helping support Black business owners in the Western region. One of the other things that I've been really focused on is helping us grow our college ranks in the West.
Okay.
We have some of the biggest and the best institutions in the country in the Western region. And it's important that we lean into our rich history to grow our numbers there. And we know that we are being disenfranchised across the board, and that's the case at some universities as well. So we need to be leveraging our position as Alpha Phi Alpha to again be the voice and the advocate of young men that look like us on those campuses. Something else that I'm very proud of that we've made progress with is our regional nonprofit. And our regional nonprofit is really important because it helps us to fund the things that I'm talking about, right? Okay. Every year at our regional convention, we give at least 2 scholarships to high school young men via our military affairs program. So those young men are typically in ROTC or are directly associated with the armed services. So that's something I'm very proud of. Every year at our regional convention, during our community empowerment program, we honor and give a award to at least 2 educators in the community who are doing innovative things to empower not only our Black and brown students, but that are also setting the example for other educators. And so, I can keep going on and on and on, but those are some of the things that we're working on that I'm very proud of. And then the final piece that I wanted to share is because I'm an executive within the tech world, I always want to connect people that are higher on the totem pole or people that are in corporate America, as well as, people who are in other arenas to create a conversation around the table. So something that I've been working on is a DE&I task force, whereby we are partnering with educational administrators at the higher education institutions to have a conversation around what does it mean to be a young Black male on a college campus, and how can Alpha help support them in creating wraparound services and 360 support to ensure that these students are successful on their campuses.
And what kind of services do you think they need? What do you perceive that as?
Well, I mean, gosh, we could run the gamut there, right? But so often I think programs are built, but it might not always take into account what exactly is going on in our community. There are many Black and brown young men that are entering college that didn't have fathers in their lives, or get to college and you're talking about like, oh, just talk to your academic advisor to build a schedule. Well, what if I don't even know what to talk to them about, right? Or what if I'm ill-advised or misadvised? And I've seen that happen before, where people turn into 5-year students, 6-year students because, they didn't take a class at the right time, or because they were told to change their major, or, different things like that. Of course, then we have the economic component of it, right? Where we need to be supporting them to get the right scholarships, to get the right funding. And what most people don't realize is that it's oftentimes not the money to pay for school, but it's the money to pay for living. That takes out some of our students. Because you can get a Pell Grant and other scholarships that are even government funded. But when I'm a student and I don't have enough money to take care of myself, and then when I'm working a job or 2 jobs, and then I'm probably sending some money back home, it begins to create this conflict, right? It's like, okay, what do I focus on more? And in most cases, they end up focusing on working to have money. So those are all the things but these are the conversations that we need to be having as alpha men, as leaders at the table with leaders from those institutions. But the reason why I call it DEI task force is because I'm driving those same conversations with corporate leaders. In other words, everyone's trying to say move away from DEI. We need to be moving to other things of focus. But again, that's a spot where Alpha Phi Alpha should be on the front lines of the conversation with corporate executives saying, hey, this is what it means for us to create parity, or this is what, we can provide a pipeline of strong black talent to your corporation, because that's one of the first things they used to say is there are not enough of them, or we don't know where to find them. Well, Alpha Phi Alpha, we can prove that wrong, and we know we can prove that wrong.
So are you hoping that this project of yours will become like a demonstration project for the rest of the fraternity, and that we can do it globally?
Absolutely. I think our current general president has done a great job of, working with educational institutions to give benefit to our members, and he's done the same thing with many of our strategic partners, right? Helping to open doors of opportunity. And so I think that, while I kind of built this initiative in support of what he was doing, I do think that as we build groundswell within the regions, that we can make this truly, a general or a global approach. Because again, we know that we have the best, the brightest, the most professionally astute and highly educated men in our fraternity. And I think we should leverage that power and demand our seat at the table. And once we get a seat at the table, make sure we leverage it.
And we talk about economics, we talk about developing these young brothers as leaders, and these relationships with corporate partners and whatnot. And you work for a major corporate company, and can we share that, or?
Yeah. So I do work at Google, and I've been blessed to work there for a number of years now. And I currently serve as the head of AI strategy and operations for Google Cloud.
Okay. How do you balance all that? Your job at Google and your work as a regional vice president?
Early mornings, long days, and late nights.
And let me add in that Brother Kimball is a new father, and so how are you balancing that part now?
Yeah. So yes, thank you for acknowledging that. I'm a proud new father of a son who I hope one day will be an alpha man. He's actually Wayne the third. And when it comes to balance, I must say, man, that I feel like this has been the case for me my entire life.
How so?
I mean, I grew up in rural America.
Okay.
I can start there. But I grew up in a household with parents that were just like, well, you're going to be involved. So, right. I mean, I feel bad for them.
And where did you grow up now?
I grew up in rural North Carolina, a little town called Roanoke Rapids, North Carolina. Okay. It's on the eastern part of the state on the 95 corridor. And my parents were just like, hey, you're going to be involved. I in retrospect, feel bad for them because they were shuttling us around all the time to, from karate to dance class to Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts for my sister and swim class over here.
How many siblings do you have?
I have one sister, and she's a member of AKA, as is my mother. Okay. And so yeah, it was just instilled in us very early on that you're going to be active. And then I got to high school, and then that just took off because then I was running track and playing basketball, and in this club and in that club and so forth and so on. And then I got to A&T, and the same thing happened. I was in SGA every single year, ultimately serving as Student Government Association president and NSBE and this and that, right? And before you know it, you're like, it's kind of turned into a habit of always being busy. But to come back to your question on how do I balance it all, not only am I just used to it now, but I would say the way I balance this is, you have to learn how to compartmentalize. Okay. And you know how alpha goes, right? There's certain seasons where alpha's super busy, and that's the pinnacle focus point at that moment, just like I'm here all this week. And then, you begin to make it ebb and flow where you can say, okay, well, I know this week is a busy week for work, or this week is a busy week at church, or this week is a busy week for family stuff. So you begin to, move the Tetris blocks around a little bit to make it all fit. But yeah, I'm very grateful also to have an amazing wife who's also a member of AKA. And
now, did you meet her at A&T?
I did not.
Okay.
I did not.
Okay.
But yeah, so she's super supportive, and of course, having support at home always makes a big difference.
Definitely. So let's go back a little bit, and let's talk about your Alpha journey.
Okay.
So when did you cross?
I was initiated in spring 2009 into the Beta Epsilon chapter, seated at North Carolina A&T.
Okay, and was your number?
I was number 10. Number 10, line named Black Enterprise.
Okay. Oh, they already knew.
I was going to say, they were clearly foreshadowing,
they already
because,
knew.
here we are today, and hey, I think it's still quite fitting.
That's amazing. And how many were in your line?
17.
17, that was a big line.
That was a large line. Even though it was Alpha South, we probably averaged in lines of, 10 to 12 per year.
Okay.
But the line the year before me, it was only 3. So I think we were making up.
Right.
But our chapter always had at least 25 people in it, which, was great because, you had the stepping bros, you had, the super academic bros, you had the bros over here that were doing all the community service and political action stuff. So it really made not only the college experience fun, because we had such a diversification of brothers in our chapter, but it also truly allowed for dividing and conquering. And as regional vice president, that's why I've used that experience to be very thoughtful in my region, where most of the chapters are smaller, to really, really, really encourage the district officers as well as the custodial alumni chapters to be strategic in how they engage, right? When you're working with a small chapter, well, if you already have a small college chapter of only 2 or 3 brothers, well, just one college chapter advisor isn't going to do. You need more people from those other chapters, those alumni chapters, to say, hey, I'm going to be the person that helps them with programming. I'm going to be the one that helps them with community service. I'm going to be the one that helps them with those other things. So again, that just goes to say that we need all hands on deck when it comes to running our college chapters, growing our college ranks, and just doing the work of Alpha.
Well, we talk about, these days, a lot of college chapters are struggling. Mm-hmm. Because a lot less black men are going to college or whatnot. And we all have that alpha story that either not only got us to college, but got us to Alpha itself. So what is your Alpha story?
So first and foremost, my grandfather, was an Alpha. He's now in Omega chapter as of last year. And he was always active. He was a life member, and every time I was at his house, I not only saw the Alpha Awards, but his membership shingle, and also his life membership plaque and all that stuff. So, and not to mention, he was a leader in the community, which is a big thing when you grew up in a small town, right? Like you take note to who the key influencers and power brokers are, and he was definitely one of those for me. And then when I got to A&T, I was an engineering major, and a key part of why I chose North Carolina A&T was because I knew I was going to be an engineer. And I knew about North Carolina A&T NSBE chapter when I was even in high school, because I was in a high school NSBE chapter. Okay. And they were winning all the awards, and then because my sister was at A&T before I got there.
She's older. Okay.
And she was, like I said, an AKA. I then learned that these people that I had been seeing representing NSBE at NSBE conventions, they were Alphas. The NSBE chapter president was an Alpha. Like literally year after year after year. That was kind of the thing. And I was like, man, that's kind of cool. Like, so they have great GPAs, they're engineering majors, they're running stuff, on the yard, and they're also running stuff like NSBE. Like, oh yeah. Like, it was just that confirming factor.
Right.
And then the final thing was Beta Epsilon. I mean, they were cool. I mean, just, they had a swag to them. At A&T, they had these long tables in the cafeteria. I mean, and the Alphas would sit there, but like everybody else wanted to sit with them, and they wouldn't. I mean, it was just cool to see that they were smart, but they were suave and had swag, and but also that people wanted to be around them. right? I think that says a lot because it really reminds you that, hey, we can walk with kings but never lose the common touch.
Wow. So I got to ask, you've done a lot. What's next for you?
It's a great question. I think the sky's the limit. And in many ways, I remain incredibly opportunistic. Of course, I chart my own path, but I'll be the first to say that if you would have asked me where I am, if you would have told me that I was going to be where I am today 15, 20 years ago, I probably would have laughed at you. And I mean that both in Alpha, I mean that in life, in my career and things of that sort. Because I just knew I was going to, be the world's best engineer. I was going to go start an engineering firm, all that type stuff. And then look, now I lead business strategy and things of that sort. I've always just been a humble servant who abides within. And the brothers saw something in me to be a regional vice president, and it's been such an honor and a pleasure to serve the Western region. And I felt the same way when I was SJ president, right? I was like, hey, if people want me to serve, or if there's ever an opportunity for me to do more and have a greater impact for the service to and betterment of any entity that I'm in, whether it's professionally or fraternally or spiritually, I will always lean into those opportunities when it's the right time and if I'm the right person.
So do you think politics?
People have mentioned politics for me. People have mentioned the pulpit for me. People have mentioned a whole bunch of things. But like I said, for me, I don't know that politics is the right place for me. Okay. Truthfully, I'm a business guy.
Okay.
So I do think that I would probably always be adjacent to elected officials from a business lens, which is why you hear me use the word economic development all the time. Right. Because I don't believe that our community should be asking for or getting handouts.
Right.
What we should be advocating for are the things that move the needle for our community. I don't want handouts from any elected official, more or less the ones that don't look like me.
Right.
That's a conversation for another day. But
definitely.
But I do think it takes the right business people at the table to have the right conversations to advocate for the communities and for the people who might be voiceless or just simply need an advocate. And I do think there's a space for someone like me in those places. Because, hey, I was always taught by my grandfather that, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And I think that's true when it comes to pretty much every aspect of life. So I just want to be a menu setter.
Well, like I said, you're in a unique position being the Western Regional Vice President. You have this passion. I can hear it in your voice. I hear it in the way you respond about economic development. And so I don't know, I could see down the line you creating various collaborations with corporations. I mean, you're already in a position with Google where you're dealing with major business leaders or whatnot. So I see that for yourself. Definitely see that for yourself. And so you're making change. And while we're on the subject of change, we are at the as I mentioned, the 2024 Phi Alpha Constitutional Convention. And how important is this convention we're at right now?
It's more important than ever in the history of Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. The reason why I say that is because we were founded well over 100 years ago. And we have been the leading fraternity,
definitely leading,
for the entire time. Our founders, our jewel founders, did such an incredible job building out our documents and the things that help us be Phi Alpha. And so I think this weekend is particularly important because there's so many things that are going on in the world around us. Society and the world has shifted. And I think it's important that in order for us to be here for another 100 plus years, that we take the opportunity to do self-examination and to look inward and be introspective to say, okay, where are the areas where we need to add, subtract, tweak in order for us to continue to be viable for another 100 plus years. I mean, let's be honest, today, and I haven't been out of college that long.
Right.
Although I was reminded of that today when I saw some young brothers from Beta Epsilon. But today, the college experience is very different from when I came through, which was very different from when you came through,
Definitely.
which was very different from when my grandfather came through in the 40s, right? So that's why this week is so important, because, hey, you have to be doing self-examination to really see how you can improve your inner workings. Whether that be process, whether that be constitution, bylaws, governing documents, the list goes on. The truth of the matter is, even if we don't change a thing,
Right.
it was still time well spent because we took the time to assess ourselves and our inner workings.
And we are definitely on the path for another 118 years.
Absolutely.
They can definitely making sure we are sustainable and our structure is well founded. So I would like to thank you, Brother Kimball, for coming out and spending some time with me on Sphinx Talk. My brother.
Hey, I appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another episode of Sphinx Talk. I'm Brother Eric Christopher Webb, and we're out.
Thank you for watching Sphinx TV. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe now for more content from the brothers of Alpha Phi Alpha. 06.